So let's talk about ordering decimal numbers. Now, I often find that if you've got a really strong understanding of place value and how place value works with decimals and fractions, how to represent them in the fraction equivalents, ordering decimal numbers becomes a lot more of a simpler idea to get your head around about why it is what it is, okay? So let's talk about the following decimals and how we actually position them on the number line. Now, I do have numbers all between 0 and 1, and for the sake of this, I think I've put this into tenths. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, I've divided this number line equally into 10 parts, so you can think about each one of these parts as a tenth. Okay, now if you can look at decimals and instantly think of them not as 0.3, but think of this as 3/10, because that value here is in my tenths place value column. Okay, I can instantly think of this as 3/10. Now 3/10 is nice and easy to locate because I've got it already divided into tenths for me. So it's 3 of these along. So 0.3 is actually just here because it's 3/10. I'll just put this a little bit more accurately, 0.3. Okay, it's right on that line. All right, the same thing can kind of apply with this. This is in the tenths column, so this is 8/10. Okay, and because I've got it divided equally into tenths here, all right, it shows me that 8 of these along, which is going to be just here. Okay, so that's where my 0.8 will belong. Now this here, if we look at this is my hundredths column, this is my tenths column. So the way that I can think of this is 25 100ths, all right? Or I can think of it as a broken up number as 2 tenths plus 5 100ths. Okay, I can break the number apart. Now this is useful because 2 tenths, well, that tells me it's above the second bar, so above this bar just in here, but it's not at the third bar, so it's less than that. But it's a little bit higher than that, okay? So it's going to be somewhere, to be honest, it's actually going to be halfway between, right in between these two, okay? Because 25 100ths, it's 5, it's halfway to that next tenth, if that makes sense. So that's the way that I kind of thought that through, and that's where my 0.25 will fit. Okay, and like I said, if you can start breaking these decimal numbers into their place values, it makes it a lot simpler to think about. So if we look at this is 6/10 and 5 100ths. We could think of it as 65 100ths. But breaking this apart is going to be 6/10 plus 5 100ths. That tells us it's going to be after the 6/10, so halfway is there, 6th is just in here. So it's going to be after that, and it's going to be halfway to the next tenth. So it's going to fall just here. So 0.65 or 65 100ths. So what about the next one? Well, the next one, we've got 0/10. Okay, so that's the first thing I'm noticing. 0/10. We have 4 100ths. Okay, so we've got 4 100ths plus 5 1000ths plus this one here, which is 6 10,000ths. So what's the tenths tell me? All right, the fact that I've got 0/10. Well, that tells me it's not even 1/10. 1/10 is here. Okay, 0 is here, and we've got a number that's greater than 0. All right, but it's not even up to our first tenth. But where is it between 0 and 1/10? Well, we look at this one and go, well, it's 4 100ths. All right, so 4 100ths isn't even halfway. So if halfway is there, it's actually going to be on this side of it. It's going to be close to halfway though. All right, but it's not going to quite be halfway. So that's getting pretty close to where we need. We're not going to get too accurate in this, but we just go slightly less than halfway. And here is our 456 10,000ths, or 0.456, like so. Okay, and that's how we can kind of break down where these numbers fit on a number line. like I said, if you start getting yourself confident with place value, it does help you a lot, because a lot of the misconceptions I see with people is they look at this number, this 456 10,000ths, this one just here, and they go, this must be the largest of them. So if I'm ordering them from smallest to largest, this should be on the end. However, the decimal place is very important and the place values are very important. So this 0.3, for example, despite the 3 itself, in and of itself being smaller than, 8 and 25 and 65, it's actually larger than some of these values because it's 3/10. Okay, so understanding place value goes a long way to understanding why they fit on the number line that they do. Now, it's very important that we also look at an example with negatives, okay, and where the positions of these actually lie. So we've got negative 0.8, okay? So I've broken these up into fifths, okay? So if we're looking at fifths now, it means that every one of these fifths is the same as 2/10. That's the equivalent fraction. Okay, so this would be 2/10 in here, then 4/10, 6/10, 8/10, so on and so forth. However, in the negative direction because I'm less than 0. So when I'm looking at this first number, I notice it's negative. Okay, so I'll just put a negative sign in front. And the 8 tells us we've got 8/10. So what that tells us is it needs to go to the left of 0, 8/10 of the way to 1. Now, I just understood that each one of these was 2/10 because they're 1/5. So 8 of those tenths will end up being just here. This next one says it's 8/10 again. It's negative 8/10, but we're adding another negative 5/10. So it's actually, 5/100ths, not tenths. So it's actually more negative. Okay, that's what it's saying. It's more negative, and it's about halfway more negative to the next tenth. All right. Now keep in mind that the next tenth would be halfway between there. So halfway between those two would be about here. And that's where that number would belong because it's more negative. It needs to be to the left of it. So this is negative 0.85. Notice I realized that I had the fractional equivalent rather than the decimal equivalent here. So negative 0.8. Okay. So let's quickly erase that so I've got a bit more space here. And let's look at a half. Well, a half is going to be 5/10, which means if I was to break it evenly within tenths, it needs to be, which means there's a line basically halfway in between each of them. We need 5/10 away along, which is just here. Okay. So that's where the half belongs. 0.25 is 2/10, but halfway to the next tenth. All right. So 2/10 plus 5/100ths, which just tells you it's halfway to the next tenth. So 2/10 is just here, but it's halfway to the next one. Keep in mind the next one, we've got it in fifths rather than tenths. So the next one's sort of that line there. Halfway between the two is here. So this is where our 0.25 would belong. Which makes, no, hang on. Gotta think about that. 0.3, 0.4. Yeah, that's fine. Cool. All right. And then the last one is the 0.155, which is 155 thousandths. We have 1/10 plus 5/100ths. So 1/10 tells us that it's at least here, but it's greater than that. So 5/100ths means it's halfway to the next point. So it's there, but it's a little bit further still because of the 5/1000ths. So plus 5/1000ths. Okay, so that tells us it's a little bit to the right of the one that I've got. I'm kind of leaving the one that I've got because it's going to be very hard to get it more accurate than that. I would need a much bigger blown up scale than what I've got. So we'll kind of just put that in there like so. But I guess the key points of this is to really understand if you get your head around place value and can think of decimals in terms of place value, it's much easier to be able to then order decimals from smallest to largest and understand where decimals fit on a number line.